This is Shu Hirata's Let's Talk Japanese Fight Sports with Charlie Jewett from sogokaku.com. Let's begin. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Stu, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great.
It's 10
really
p.m.
hot in Japan.
Oh, yeah, I know. And then how about you to all the listeners? Thank you for listening. And how is the weather out there? Usually in summer in Japan, it's nasty hot.
It is a strange combination between always raining, humid, and very hot.
All right. So always raining, humid, very hot. And let's dive into this first subject, which is One Championship Japan show postponed.
Right.
I've heard this from more than a few people that they were planning on show in Japan in September. I mean, in the beginning, I remember Chatterley said he was planning on doing 4 shows in Japan, right? Or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
They were very ambitious with their initial announcement earlier in the year.
Right. So they were supposed to show in September in Japan. And I heard that they wanted to match Takeru against Rotan immediately.
Right.
But what I've heard is that Takeru was reluctant of that idea. He wanted to maybe get a one fight in between, because how he got injured on the last fight and So he basically said no. And that was the last straw broke camel's back in a way that this Japan show was supposed to be majorly sponsored by Rakuten, which is one of the Japan's biggest, shopping, internet shopping mall brand. And they basically said no. If no Takeru versus Rotan, then no Rakuten. So that's it. So they have decided to not do the show this year. So what I'm hearing is that no one championship Japan show in 2024.
Okay. So, yeah, because that makes sense because I actually know some people that work at Rakuten.
Mm-hmm.
And when the last show happened earlier in the year, they actually mentioned that Rakuten had like a benefit program where they were essentially giving tickets to the employees.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Rakuten might have been one of the platforms with which to buy the tickets to the event.
Right.
And so it makes sense because I think Rakuten was their major sponsor.
Right. So
and it also makes sense to me too, because outside of Takeru, I just don't think there's any fighter that Rakuten would want to tie their name behind. Because Rakuten
is right, yeah.
They sponsor like pro soccer teams in Europe, and they do all sorts of sports stuff around the world. They're a huge company. They're one of the biggest companies in Japan. And from a branding perspective, I just don't see why they'd want to I don't want to say waste their money, but invest in an event that doesn't have Takeru on it.
Exactly. So this is a different concept. Like when most of the sponsors who sponsors the UFC shows, they sponsor UFC, not a particular fighter, right? But in terms of one championship, most of the time, it really doesn't go that way. It's for a particular fight or the fighter, right? So I guess from Rakuten's point of view, the value of Takeru was far more than one championship itself.
Oh, absolutely. As far as their star power in the Japanese market, they don't have a fighter that can compare with them.
Mm-hmm. Now, the one championship in general, they did cancel Dubai show, and they're doing a show in US in Denver in September. So
right, I think the Dubai show, there were some rumors that might have been them trying to garner up some more investment from the Middle East, and maybe that didn't go as well, and so that event got canceled.
Yeah. Now, did you hear? Do you read a note written by Mr. Shinya Aoki?
I do sometimes.
Very active. He's probably making very good money, right, on that. And,
right, because for those that don't know, you only read like the first couple paragraphs, then you have to pay money to read the rest of the article.
Exactly, right. And people pay like $2, $3 to read the rest of the article. But if he has
Shinya Aoki is very known for just saying whatever he wants.
Exactly.
One championship has no control over what he says.
Exactly. Now, I have to say that he has to be the most famous Japanese in one championship's history, right? And he's really voicing his opinion about how he's been sitting on the deck for a while, and he's basically implying that he's now old, not in the prime years anymore, and now he's in the situation as other fighters in one championship who is sort of been sitting on the deck for a long time. So this is actually a first time, because Shinya has been very active with one championship, right? He fought so many MMA grappling fights. He's always there. But this is the first time in his career with the one championship that he's not getting fights.
This is kind of a comment, not a complaint that you hear in association with one championship, is that there's very clearly fighters they're trying to promote, fighters they like, and those fighters have a very active schedule. But I have heard some Japanese fighters that used to fight for the promotion, and I have heard some coaches complain that one championship lures fighters to the promotion with the promise of these big paydays per fight, but the contracts don't really have an expiration date. And then all of a sudden the offers never come. So you just waste the prime of your career sitting around waiting for these fights that never come.
Yeah, that's the hard one. Yeah, I mean, and technically there is an expiration on the contract, but it's a long contract. So, yeah, you pretty much give up your prime years if you're being sitting on a deck, So
plus there's some weird stuff too. Wasn't there that there was supposed to be a Muay Thai match between Stamp and the French lady? I forget her name. And it was going to be a draw.
Yep.
And the girl from France who left said, if it's a draw, I don't get my win bonus. Why would I even consider taking this fight if I'm essentially agreeing to get paid half no matter what happens? So, I mean, there seems to be a lot of strange stuff going on over there.
Yeah, but again, in MMA world too, when you draw, you don't get a win bonus.
I know, but it was like some special rules bout they're trying to put together.
One of the listeners, his name is Anissa Mexon.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. John. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So, and here you go. Daniel said the Ritter recently left the one championship, despite her being active there. And I'm actually surprised he was able to leave. You know what I mean?
Well, it seems, what I've noticed is it seems to be that if you're famous enough, you can kind of get out of it because they don't want you to complain about it too loudly. Because wasn't there also a whole weird situation with Vitor Belfort, where they signed Vitor, he never fought and just quietly left?
Right. I mean, all this big signing of Sage Northcutt to Eddie Alvarez to Misha Tate to the front office, I mean, they all kind of gradually left, right?
Right.
They never made a big announcement, anything about it, so we can only kind of guess, but So, but here's what it is, though. Right now, there's still one Friday night fights happens every week, and I still do see some of the Japanese fighters here and there.
I will say, what's critical, I really do like those Friday night fights because the ring, that white ring, looks beautiful in the Thai stadium. I forget the name of that really famous kickboxing stadium that Muay Thai stadium takes place in. But it is they do have a good production value.
They do have a product, yeah, I know. So I mean, and it's good to have a show every week, so it means more opportunity for the fighters. But it's funny. I'll tell you this. Now I can tell this. I'll reveal this. That this year's Road to UFC, there are 3 Japanese fighters who said no to the offer. 2 of them,
really,
2 of them ended up fighting for one Friday night and lost and came back. One thought he got an offer to fight in Road UFC and said no. And he still got a fight to offer in Dana White's Contender Series, and he still said no. Not ready.
That's crazy. Oh, he said he wasn't ready?
Huh?
That's crazy to me.
Coach believe he's not ready.
Yeah, but I mean, that just seems wild to me. There's no guarantee that offer is ever going to come again.
Exactly. So, and for 2 of them ended up going to one Friday fights and fought some very tough guy and lost. So, I don't understand this career choice, but some fighters or some coaches does that. And the part of the reason is that one championship has a Japanese lady working in an office in Singapore, and for coaches, it just makes them easier to communicate. So they will choose that so-called easier communication path.
Yeah, I've communicated. She's very nice and very good at her job. So maybe that just makes it so much more convenient for them.
That too, exactly. So, but here's the rule. I mean, you say no to Road UFC, say no to Dana White's Contender Series, but you end up in one Friday fight night. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure, and it's not like they're getting paid any better.
I've always also kind of been under the impression that if you say no to the UFC, they kind of never come back.
Not necessarily. Actually, I would say no to UFC many times. It's just the way you say no, and if there's a specific reasons for it, Sean Mick understands. And I'm just, hey, sorry, I couldn't convince the coach or something like that. Obviously, but I will try to do that next year again, kind of thing. And they're always about getting a top fighters. And bottom line is this: some fighters, especially in American cases, they change managements and coaches a lot too, right? So those will already happen next year is the way they approach. So yeah, they'll take it even though you say no. But anyway, so some of the choices the Japanese fighters made this year, was a little bit questionable. But in this world, if the coaches say no, you're not ready, the coach said no, this is what we're supposed to do. Most of the time, the Japanese fighter will listen to the coaches. Yeah. And okay, so since we mentioned UFC, let's talk about this one, Kai Asakura UFC update. Now there are so many rumors circulated, right? Somebody reported he was fighting in the bantamweight in Australia show, but that didn't take place.
Right. So the most recent news is that I believe last night he did a YouTube video with Kurumi, who is like one of the RIZIN ambassadors.
Are they dating? It seems like I mean,
it's one of those things where they publicly said they aren't dating, but rumors are still afloat. But he told her, it was very interesting because he said that the UFC is treating him very specially. And they're treating him, this is his words, they're treating him not just like some other signing, and they want to announce his fight in a big way. And he essentially alluded to the idea that they were going to announce it at the Conor McGregor event. But when Conor McGregor withdrew, they decided to push the announcement back. But it sounds like his fight is scheduled, and they want to announce the fight in a big way. And it sounds like they're ready to get behind and push him, give him a lot of promotional push. So it'll be interesting to see what it is.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, everybody's wondering which weight class he's going to fight.
Right, bantamweight or flyweight.
Yeah, I think so too. I've heard that his wish is to fight at the flyweight, which kind of makes sense, And announcement in big way is big way where I think the Japanese would like to consider it. But you know how UFC announces fights, So it's going to be a regular announcement, and obviously it's already being told to the public, so it's not going to be really a big announcement that he signed or anything like that, right? So
right.
Yeah, but I think this is what I think. I'm hearing that he's getting much better paid than the entry fighters, which makes sense, And if that means he's going to have to fight tough guys, so what his situation sort of remind me of Takanori Gomi. Remember Gomi signed with the UFC, and I can reveal this now that he got a really good deal at the time because he had the TV Tokyo with him, and they were guaranteeing to air that fight on TV Tokyo and blah blah blah. So he got a pretty good pay. I know exactly how much he got paid, and because of that, what did he got? They banged him against Kenny Florian first. Second offer was Joe Stevenson. Right. Yeah, he got canceled. Then Tyson Griffin. And then what happened after that? Nate Diaz. Like that kind of stuff. So they're really putting a tough guys. So that's what's going to be for Kai. So, as a fighter, you got to consider that as a sort of like an opportunity. If somebody give you a ranked fighter, and if you win, then you have a right to ask for the same kind of money that he or she is making, was making. So, so I consider this an opportunity, and I'm actually excited because this is really the first time so-called big general public will recognize UFC. I'm talking about general public in Japan, right? I mean, face it, in Japan, nobody knows UFC. Dana White could walk down the street with Shibuya, and most of the time, probably nobody would notice him, right? I mean, so this is the time. I hope UFC will make a big wave in the Japanese market.
I was listening to the thing. He said it was kind of interesting how this all came together. He kind of alluded to the fact that the UFC reached out to him after he knocked out Juan Archuleta on New Year's Eve. And that Sakakibara actually tried to get him to stay in RIZIN. and that he wanted him to defend his title at least once, and that he refused, and Mikuru also stepped in and kind of refused for him, which to me, like, that's the right move. Like, why risk
move, right? And besides,
why risk losing everything? You're coming off this amazing knockout. Why risk not going to the UFC?
Right, and what's the point of doing title defense? You would have to fight Sutro, Kim, or Naoki anyway.
Yeah.
So that's just a risky, it makes zero sense. And no,
come back to RIZIN after UFC. Like, you can always come back.
This tells that RIZIN had to swallow the contract with the Kai in a way there's no extension, even though you became champion. So they probably didn't have any championship clause, right? I mean, yeah. So no, so I'm happy for him, and he did it, and hopefully, a lot of other Japanese fighters learn from this, Well,
I think it'll elevate the UFC probably to a higher level than it's ever been.
Oh yeah, it will. So they better thank you to Mr. Asakura. I mean, just because of him, it's just going to be bigger,
Because even like Kid and Gomi and those guys they're like way past their prime.
Way past prime. Yeah.
The MMA boom was over in Japan.
Yeah. And the fact it was never on the national television in Japan. Back then, there was no streaming, none of that. So,
Well, Fight Pass, too, is like super affordable in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get Fight Pass, you get to watch all the events for free. Plus, I think UFC is on Unext now anyway. So, I mean, it'll be very accessible to the Japanese audience outside of the time difference.
Right. So, again, I hope. Oh, by the way, so it's being announced that in US too, the Abema Live, the new app that it was started in America, you can watch Super RIZIN from that app.
Oh, very cool. So you can watch it if you're in the US and you wanted to watch RIZIN, you could order it through the Abema app.
Yes, Abema Live. Just download that. It's available on Apple Store, and not only that, in the future, you probably can do another pay-per-view with Noah, or most of probably RIZIN shows. And the one thing I can't tell you this, but they're going to do another big pay-per-view show on boxing in September. So it's really geared towards the America, like North American market. For now, it's only America only. So it's really for the US audience. So I think they should just download it, because besides the pay-per-view, they put up a couple of anime contents and some of the past fights. I mean, I don't know how much more they're going to put it up, but I think there'll be a little bit more, to see than just the fight. So, I think it's worth it. Just download it.
Well, I mean, I know, especially the last RIZIN show. I don't even think it was on a U.S. streaming service.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the pay-per-view is even available. So this will make things way easier for people over there.
Exactly right. And I think, Chad, you'll be getting those press releases too, right? I think
I did. I started getting the emails.
Yeah, I put the name on it, so you'll be getting it from now on. So
perfect.
Yeah. All right. Now let's talk about the Super RIZIN preview. I mean, since I guess the big show next weekend in Japan, and it's almost 40,000 people, and even tickets prices are super high. It's almost all sold out. They had to add the seats and all kinds of stuff. So
the only tickets left. The only tickets left are like VIP tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that those are essentially already sold out too. It's just they haven't organized it yet.
Right. I mean, basically the promotion size always keeps certain number of tickets too, for themselves. Right. So, but most of them. But this is kind of amazing. 40,000 seats. It gets sold out, and you really don't see that outside America. I mean, outside the UFC, I would say. I mean, sure, KSW, Octagon, MMA has done the big shows, but it really not as consistent as RIZIN these days. I mean, you got to admit that they've been around for 10 years now. And every year, Japanese media is writing, they're not going to last. They're not going to last. They're going to go out of business. They're lasting, and they're doing well. They're selling pay-per-views. There
were definitely a couple of rough years, but I don't think they've ever been doing better, at least financially, than they are now.
Oh yeah, exactly. And when you really think about it, it's not like they have a huge name that demands huge purse. You know what I mean?
Right.
So all the payrolls are, it's pretty big, but relatively small, compared to UFC. But they're doing very well. So now from Japanese fans' point of view, it's all about Mikuru versus Ren, obviously.
Right.
That show is really all about that. Now from American audience point of view, what do you think is the biggest selling point for this Super RIZIN?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, because I got to ask you this, because I wonder how we're going to sell this pay-per-view, right? RIZIN. We saying like 'cause I work for Abema, so I do this PR. So
I don't know, man. I still feel like even in the U.S., Mikuru and Ren is still the biggest fight.
yeah, because Pacquiao, I'm not sure, right? Because since it's exhibition, how much people are really interested,
Well, I don't. We'll talk about the Pancrase show. We'll talk about the Pancrase show a little bit later.
Mhm.
Like, don't worry about it. We'll talk about the Ito fight.
Right.
But for this fight, I mean, I gotta say, the Mikuru versus Ren to me is still the biggest because, as you said, Pacquiao's an exhibition.
Mhm.
I think that they're starting to be a little fatigued with the boxing exhibitions.
I
think
so.
that
Yeah,
Mayweather did it one too many times.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, Pacquiao just doesn't seem like that big of a draw anymore. And his opponent is completely unknown in the US.
Yeah.
So that's also going to be a negative.
Yeah.
Mikuru, on the other hand, you can always say that he fought Mayweather.
Right.
And Ren just has the look and personality where I think he's going to sell well no matter what market.
What's so funny? Conor, when he met Ren, Conor said, well, you're going to fight the guy who fought Mayweather, right? So that's exactly right. So he didn't know the name, but he knew the guy who fought Mayweather is the opponent, So yes, I think most of the American audience will feel that way, right?
Plus, I mean, they're doing some crazy promotions for this that you could even like show out of the US because I think they have like 100 taxis in Tokyo right now with Ren's and Mikuru's faces plastered on them, driving around the city. And Ren and Mikuru did the special put on your seatbelt videos inside of the taxi. So I wanted to bring this up to you. I was talking to my wife about this because she was comparing it to the match. Because both of those this sold out. The match is sold out ticket-wise. Now the question is, how do they do comparatively when it comes to pay-per-view? Now, if you remember back to the match, they didn't start because there was all the issues before it with losing the Fuji TV and everything. They didn't start promoting it till like a week before the match. But this one, RIZIN has been making YouTube content. They've been doing these like taxis, these publicity stunts. I think they've been doing a lot more work promoting this.
Oh, I agree. Because in the Pride days, they used to promote like a week, right? Before the show. Right. Yeah, not anymore. 2 months.
They've been doing this a lot. So I would not be surprised if this does like match-esque numbers.
Yes, in terms of pay-per-view too, right? I mean, because
yes.
It's a young kids audience, and they can easily pick up a phone and order it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Plus, I mean, I cannot underestimate how popular these two people are, especially with young audiences that have that disposable income, who have the money to spend on a pay-per-view.
I mean, huge. I'll tell you this interesting story about it. Lots of MMA fans in Japan. I wouldn't say lots, but good portion of MMA male fans in Japan used to be like a little delinquent and did something bad in the youth days. But they're now actually a semi-successful business owners kind of thing. So it really is. They do have, and they're done raising kids. So no, you can spend the money anywhere you want. That's actually, besides the young audience, the audience in those 40s and 50s who used to be kind of a little wild back then. They're one of the biggest purchasers for these pay-per-views, and they love guys like Mikuru, who's coming from a street, guy like Ren, who's he's tattooed up, kind of stuff. So this is a very it's like in 2024 kind of matchup. It's something completely different from the Pride days.
Well, it's kind of like when we said because the only thing I can compare this to is the match. When you bring up the match, the question afterwards was like, you can't top this. There is no other matchup you could make to replicate this. Right. This is almost a similar perfect situation between these two guys, where the momentum towards this match with like Ren flicking Mikuru off from the crowd and everything has been going. This has been cooking for so long, and they're kind of fighting at the perfect time. I just don't see what RIZIN could do after this to even match this level of popularity in this fight.
Exactly. That's the little issues too, because after this fight, whoever wins this fight is going to probably stay as a RIZIN star. But besides that, what else is really out there, right? Because Horiguchi's not sure, is he going to stay or go to the PFL next year? We don't know that Kai is gone, right? So
Well,
that
also,
means no bantamweight champion anymore, you know?
especially if Mikuru loses this, I could see him taking a step back and focusing on his YouTube and becoming more of like a promoter manager who still fights, but I would see him fighting lower caliber talent.
Exactly. I mean, I always said this from a few years ago. The Asakura brothers, that Kai should be like a Hoist, and Mikuru should be like a Hickson. So it's the same route that they're taking. So no, I agree. I mean, he doesn't have to take any more chances. He already got knocked out by Yaman. So if he loses or if he gets knocked out, most of the time I tell my clients that if you get knocked out on a striking to the head twice, unconscious, more than 10, 15 seconds, you really should take a break and even want to consider, retiring, kind of stuff, because you do have to consider life after fight too.
Well, that's why
plenty,
I could see Mikuru doing like thriller-esque fights.
Right.
He just fights other influencers.
I would see that. Yeah, exactly. He can make money. It's not really about him being a number one in the world. It's not what it is.
As my wife was saying, like his fans, they just want to see him win. They don't care who he beats. They just want to see him win.
Exactly, right. And, funny thing about it is the last time when Sakakibara did the Saitama Super Arena Stadium show was, I think it was a Pride. And it was Ogawa versus Yoshida, But it was a huge thing partly because, they both went to Olympics. They both won national champions. It's like they're super athletes who was doing the evolved sports called MMA. Now, there's no concept like that on this time, right? No. There's no athlete concept, none of that. So it's a different era now,
Oh, completely different.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about this fight between Ogikubo and Makoto Shinryu? I gotta ask this, Ren, Ogikubo, the Makoto, both my clients. So I had to ask you that question, but
I'll say that some people were kind of critical of Shinryu's performance in his last fight with Horiguchi. But I actually thought in the first round especially, he did very well. And I thought he really took the fight to Horiguchi and made it a very exciting fight and showed off his skill set. And if anything, I left the fight thinking like Shinryu is a dangerous man. Like this guy is a very good fighter. And Ogikubo's kind of been on this, how do I say, knife's edge of like, is he going to retire? Is he not going to retire for a long time now? And he keeps seeming to have these resurgences, but he has been on kind of a skid. I think he's like, 1-3 in his last 4. And
he's not getting any younger too,
No. And I mean, his style's got to be hard on his body. That grinding wrestling style is just not good. But I mean, it's also one of those styles that if Shinryu doesn't have an answer for it, he's going to be in for a very long night.
Right.
That being said, though, just based off of their performances recently, this has got to be Shinryu's. He's got to be the favorite going into this.
Yeah, I wonder what the odds is, because I'm not supposed to bet on fights. So
who was that guy in the U.S. that like essentially got banned from the UFC for doing that? That one coach.
John.
Laura Sanko's coach. Whatever.
That's not John. I mean, yeah, I know. Yeah.
No, but I mean, Shinryu's only lost twice. The most recent loss was to Horiguchi, and he looked really good in that fight. And I think he's kind of on the verge of becoming one of the best fighters in the promotion.
I hope so, because if he wins this one, I'm hoping him to get a rematch against the what's his name, Horiguchi, obviously. Yeah. So now, what do you think about this bare knuckle thing? Like, how he's doing the partnership with the bare knuckle, whatever,
It got some attention because they've already done one bare knuckle fight, I believe.
Right.
And it didn't get a lot of attention from what I noticed. And I mean, this is just. I mean, if this fight keeps Dotson and RIZIN and keeps him busy, that's great. I don't think this fight, to me, I mean, it's kind of buried on the card, if you ask me honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. Right.
I mean, it's better than the other bare knuckle fight where I don't even know why it's on. The women's bare knuckle fight to me is especially confusing. I don't know. Neither one of them is a rising fighter. I don't know why that fight's even happening, but
yeah, exactly. So this, what are the other really, like, I guess from the Japanese point of view, is like this women's fight, nobody knows who they are pretty much, right? So
I think the only thing that's making like any Speakway, I think one of them has like an OnlyFans or something, which the Japanese fans have now discovered. So there's some excitement on that, I guess. But yeah.
Then we got the Reina coming back fighting Kate Lotus.
Right.
Yeah, and of course Pacquiao, Ampo.
Now Rena versus Kate Lotus is good because I mean that's got like the whole. They're just redoing Rena versus Yuri Shim, this pretty girl fight. I think it's going to get a lot of attention when it happens. It was supposed to be Izawa, but Izawa got injured.
Right, that's what I heard. Yes.
I did a Google trend search just to see what kind of attention Manny Pacquiao is getting.
Okay.
Nothing in Japan. Nobody. Nothing. Globally, it's quite high, but in Japan, it's generating almost like zero. This guy's not getting looked up in Japan. No one cares about him.
Not even Ampo too, huh? Maybe Ampo gets more at this point.
I think Ampo would be getting more because Ampo's been having a crazy year. Ampo's been having a good time.
Right. And Daniel asked, I heard about the Ryan Garcia potentially boxing fight in RIZIN. I'll tell you this on the record that his name was mentioned way before to me when I was talking about one of my clients in RIZIN. You can guess who, but so yeah, I mean his name has been circulating in the name. I mean during the conversation for almost a year now, but I'm not sure who's going to do it, and I don't know if it makes sense because he's not that famous in Japan.
That's true.
I mean, sure about the weight miss and drinking beer at the weigh-ins kind of stuff. I mean, he only got the buzz during the fight fans, amongst the fight fans. So
that is something I should bring up. Is that while I did say Manny Pacquiao is not generating any results, when he comes to when he was coming to these promotional events, like where he would come and speak at Rising events, he did have like this aura where the crowd was very in awe of him being there. So while I don't think he sells tickets to the Japanese audience, I do think his name adds this kind of legitimacy to it and helps build up it builds up the aura of the event.
Right, and the approach about this Japanese promotion from Fridays to now RIZIN is like each show is like a big all-star lined up festival kind of thing, right? So yeah, I think his name adds to that, for sure.
I'm also just curious how much he's getting paid because with the yen just tanking, it's got to be expensive for them to be bringing him over.
Yeah, exactly. I got to remind this to our listeners. I'm pretty sure everybody knows, but yen has been tanking for the last 3 years. And I'll tell you this on the record. I guess we have to mention here that for the last 30 years, I don't think the Japanese wage went up, because it's so funny. I have this friend who went to look for a teacher as the English teacher in Japan, like 25 years ago. And Gekkyu, the monthly salary was 30 man,
Yeah. Which is like a good salary now.
Good salary. But still, like 25 years later, just the heck of it.
Still a good salary, yeah.
It's the same salary. So, I mean, that's pretty bad. And the reason I'm saying this is that many Japanese fans are hoping to see another UFC Japan show, right? So, since Kai
financials just don't make sense.
Winning, blah, blah, blah. But for those listeners who maybe didn't know about this, but the last 3 past UFC Japan show was bought by Dentsu. So they paid a certain amount of money, and they guarantee all kinds of stuff. So the UFC didn't have to take any risk going there.
Yeah, didn't essentially Saitama Super Arena just keep the ticket sales?
Yeah. Here's what it is. Back then, when they did the deal, $1 was like a 79 or 80 yen. So right now, $1 is like what, 157, almost 160 yen.
Yeah, they're saying it might go to 170 in a couple months.
It can go 200. So that means it's more than double of what they were doing. So let's say if they paid like 3 million back then, that's 6 million now. You know what I mean, kind of stuff. So I don't know. I think this, unfortunately, unless you're next or somebody like Rakuten is willing to drop a lot of dough, I think UFC Japan show still a tall order.
Yeah, unless someone else pays for it and UFC just takes the pay-per-view money, they're not going to do it.
Right. All right, so let's talk about upcoming Pancrase and
wait. There is one other fight on this
card.
What is it? Interesting. I just want to briefly mention it. Suguru Ni versus Majima.
Oh, yes, Mr. Majima, my client. Of course, I had to mention that. Now, tell me why they're kind of very popular both.
In the past, I kind of mocked Suguru Ni. I have never been so wrong. He's one of the most exciting fighters I've ever seen fight.
Yeah, I know.
His fight in Pancrase last year, where he won the title, this guy does not care. He wants to put on an exciting fight. He will risk getting finished to do it, and he brutally knocks people out. He gets crazy submissions. He goes for like head scissor triangle chokes. He has those crazy knockouts in RIZIN. He may not be the most skilled fighter, but he's certainly one of the most exciting. And then you have him going against Majima, who's also just like a stud. So this fight, to me, actually has potential to be one of the more exciting fights on the card.
Oh, I agree. And the fact that I think for fans in Japan, they know Nii is a bouncer at the club, right? And
His Instagram's hilarious. It's just him with like 50 hostesses, like hanging outside of clubs in Roppongi. And when he fought in Pancrase, half the crowd there was for him. And it was all these like, it was just like half like Nigerian dudes from Roppongi and like all these hot girls, all these and like other bouncers.
right.
It went wild when he won. There's like champagne going off. So it's a very interesting fan base.
Right. So Nii's from those exciting night world of Shinjuku or Roppongi, whatever that is, right, in Tokyo. But on the other side of the coin, Majima lives in Fa in Yamaguchi, exactly. Working at the factory, doing welding, molding kind of work, and taking kids to daycare every morning kind of stuff. So it's so different, right? Their lifestyles are so different.
Plus, I think they both know that an exciting win at this event propels them to a new level of like stardom.
Exactly, right.
Because this event's going to be huge, but not every fighter realizes that like I need to go do something exciting because I can like help take some of the glory from this. But I think Nii has been talking in interviews. He is well aware of that. He's like, an exciting performance here means I'm a superstar. So,
yeah, exactly. So in a way, it's very weird. Like a lot of fighter wants for Super RIZIN, of course, because it's the biggest show. That's where you want to get a spotlight. So from my point of view, I'm pretty surprised that I was able to put Majima in there because he lost, last fight. And the point is like maybe he's not one of those all-star superstar RIZIN that gets into Super RIZIN, but he got in, so he understands the opportunities. Another case is, I'll tell you this, Naoki Inoue. People wonder how come he's not fighting Super RIZIN, right? We were thinking about doing his fights in Super RIZIN, but after we discussed it with Shingo RIZIN people, they all agree that better for him to fight in the next show in September, because
he could be the main event in another show.
Oh, co-main, whatever that is, he'll be fighting on the better positions within the show. He gets more spotlights. You know what I mean? Like if he fights in Super RIZIN, he may get buried, right, into the other card. So yes, so Naoki was supposed to fight the Super RIZIN, but now he's fighting, later.
Yeah, smart move. No, it's absolutely a possibility.
And what and stuff like that, but later. You know what I
mean, when you have this many fights on an event, there's no doubt that like at least a third of them are going to be like, when you walk out, you're going to forget they happened.
Exactly. So that's actually a part of the branding that we all have to think about, Not just fighting on Super RIZIN may not be a right choice for some fighters.
I just think that Majima and Nii are going to bring fireworks.
I think so too. So for Majima and Nii, this is the opportunity. Of course, they're taking a chance,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So
I wanted to make sure we brought this fight up because I didn't want this one to get buried.
Of course. All right. So let's talk about this last upcoming Pancrase and Deep show. So what's the card out there for?
Okay. So this weekend on Sunday, we have Pancrase 346.
Yep. Okay.
And as Saeed mentioned in the main event, we have Seiichiro Ito taking on Muhammad Salakhidinov.
Okay.
And if you're unfamiliar with Muhammad, he's only 2-0. And all of his fights have been in Pancrase. Okay. But the reason he's where he is he had a very impressive amateur career.
Right. IMMA, right?
He was an IMAF champion.
Right.
And I think he's from Tajikistan. And I mean, this guy is a grappling wizard. I think his background's in combat sambo.
Yes.
Think of that like Dagestani style, and you'll have a pretty good image of what his style is. Just never-ending chain grappling, always throwing punches from every position.
Right.
And that is why he is in this match, because he's 2-0, but in those two fights, he absolutely dominated his opponents. So it's a very exciting signing by Pancrase, and I think Ito might have his hands full with this one.
Oh, I know. And the fact is, let's say if he became a champion, where is he going from there? I mean, obviously, most of the guys will probably wants to go to UFC, right?
Right.
So,
Mhm.
so
Well,
sometimes I wonder, he comes in, you book with this great fighter, win, give him a title, and he never comes back to defend the title, right? So,
it'll be
he's
interesting to see what happens because Pancrase has historically proven to be their champions have a very easy route to the UFC.
oh, exactly. There was no tie down, none of that, right? So
it will be interesting to see what happens. But on Ito's side, I mean, Ito is a very popular fighter. He recently announced his marriage to the K1 former K1 champion Miyu Sugawara.
mhm.
So I mean, she did a round girl thing I think at one of the last K1 show, but she's at the event, so his popularity is rising. He's got kind of like this power couple thing going on now. He's a very exciting fighter too, a rising veteran. But from what I've seen from Muhammad, I mean, he's going to have to knock him out or something because Muhammad's never going to stop coming.
Oh yeah, I know. I've seen this guy fight, and I agree with you. This is going to be a tough one for Ito.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another title fight coming up too for girls, right? I mean,
yeah, co-main. I'm very excited for this.
okay.
It is wild to me. Honoka Shigeta made her debut in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
This girl's a stud, judo background. She is ripped. She's a natural strawweight, and I think her teammate at the time was the Pancrase strawweight champion, Karen.
Okay.
So she went up to flyweight, and she just defeated Higashi for the title in March or April, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And Sugiyama has actually come over to Pancrase, which I want to talk about this a little bit more after this.
Okay.
But essentially, she talked to Saeki-san at Deep, and Deep just was very direct with her. They said, getting flyweights in Japan is going to be almost impossible. We just don't have the competition for you to fight unless you want us to like fly people over from Thailand. So they let her come over to Pancrase, and now she's fighting. She won her debut, and now she's fighting for the title. She's actually never won a championship despite her very long career.
Right.
So I think she's very motivated on that aspect. But I'm very high on Honoka. She's very mentally strong. She does a lot of German suplexes, which I like. And she's very physically strong. And she's met her goals is she wants to fight Seika Izawa, which is probably why she's dropping back down to strawweight.
Right.
And she trains with Kai Asakura and them all at the Black Belt Japan. And very impressive, very physical. And I think it should be a good fight. If she's able to because Sugiyama, one of her strengths is her own physicality. She's a fitness model. She's very physically strong as well. And if Honoka is able to outmuscle her, I think that Sugiyama will be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and Honoka is much younger too, right? So
yeah, she's like 20.
Yeah, and you know, you can tell if she became a champion, she would be in the road to UFC next year. It's obvious, right?
Well,
if she's team black belt, you know.
I love her mindset too, because I know you know the guys over at MMA Planet. They did a couple of interviews with her that were very good. And she essentially, her parents didn't want her to pursue MMA because they said there's like no money in it.
Yeah.
And she just asked for 2 years. She said, give me 2 years to become financially independent or I'll move on. And in under a year, she became the champion. And man, it looks like she's on her way to becoming financially independent if this keeps going. So I hope she keeps going with it.
Yeah, if she made it to road to UFC and she got that contract, yeah, I mean, because dollars are much more stronger now, you know.
She has something that if she does cut down to strawweight, she has something that I think one of the problems with a lot of Japanese women when they go abroad is they just don't have the physique to compete at these higher weight classes. And she looks like she's built for strawweight. She's very muscular, got the right bone structure. It looks like that is her actual weight class. She's not like a blown up atom weight or anything. And so I think she has a lot of potential.
So, but in a way, if she's fighting at 125, I'm pretty sure maybe she could even go down to 115 if she's going to.
Oh, she is. Yeah, she said that's her natural like weight class.
That's what I thought. Right. So she'll be probably gearing towards 115 next year after this for a road to UFC. Yeah. So she'll be a one fighter to watch, I think.
Yeah, and she's at the Black Belt Japan, which has kind of quietly become a pretty good gym in Japan.
Well, they're a price for a network to begin with to just change the name. So there has been a very good team. That has been the one. teams in Japan.
Correct.
So.
But I think only 2 of the gyms left to make the black belt Japan.
True.
It's the Kashiwa location, which think like Rei Tsuraya, and the Okinawa location, which is where Taira comes from. And I know a bunch of them just went down to Okinawa and trained at Taira's gym in preparation for this fight. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
All right.
But I thought it was kind of funny because you and I have said in the past how we think fighters should like have jobs. They shouldn't be like spoiled. But she kind of proves it the other way because she told her parents, I want to get as good as quick as I can, as fast as I can. So I don't want to like work a job and only train at nights. And so for her, it's work paying off. I think for other fighters we mentioned in the past, maybe they need.
Well, yeah, I guess she had a parents who was willing to support that too, right? So
right, exactly.
in many cases, the fighters came from outside of Tokyo. They moved to Tokyo, ended up getting a job, hard time, you know?
Well, I think the problem is sometimes fighters in that position just aren't training.
Exactly.
Like, if you're doing that, I expect you to be training like all day long. I expect you to be working as hard as you can.
I mean, if you're a real athlete, you train in the morning, rest, you train at night. You know what I mean?
Right,
Because
exactly.
resting is part of training too. So,
yeah.
All right. So, any other fights interesting here, or we'll move on to deep, or let's see.
I will say, in connection to that fight, actually, in September, there's going to be another Pancrase show.
Okay.
Pancrase 347, and Emi Fujino is going to fight Salt.
Oh, yeah.
Title.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And I think their atomweight champion, Satomi Takano, is actually fighting Hong. You might remember from Black Combat, who fought Oshima.
Right.
And the reason I bring this up is because if Honoka drops down to strawweight, I could see her very easily getting an immediate title shot against whoever wins this fight.
Wins on this one. Yeah, I could see that. And I think she should be able to beat those two.
Exactly. You know? And this also ties into something else I wanted to bring up. Both of these fighters are Shuto fighters. Salt came to Pancrase from Shuto. Emi Fujino is currently the Shuto strawweight champion, and they're loading her out. Pancrase has been doing a very good job of sharing fighters with both Shuto and Deep. They, for the past couple of years, they've been kind of cycling fighters in and out. I first noticed it with King Reina because your client, I believe, Yoko, was a Pancrase fighter, was she not?
She fought in Pancrase, but she also fought in Deep too.
Right, but when she fought in Deep, the whole like VR beforehand was like Pancrase versus Deep. They did like this whole like funny angle to it. So the promotions have been a lot more willing to share talent than they have historically, and I think it's a good thing because a lot of these divisions, especially women's strawweight and flyweight, just aren't deep enough for them to hoard fighters.
Oh, exactly. For women's MMA in Japan, they have to share, and they can't fight fighters down. Otherwise, you know, it's actually not a good for promotions too. So what Pancrase did only makes sense, you know.
Right, and plus they have fun with it because I mean, Sayaki is always willing to like hop in a VR video and kind of like with the Black Combat stuff and be like, help sell the fight. And so yeah, everybody wins in this situation.
Yeah.
And also, I believe Shuto, speaking of women's MMA, I'm sorry, that's my area of focus. They also announced the Third Colors event, their third all-women's event.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah.
And they haven't finalized all of the fights, but the one of the fighters worth keeping an eye on is Ayaka Watanabe is actually returning to action. She, as you may recall, audience, she fought Machi in RIZIN. And I believe she lost by a split decision in a very close fight. Recently, so for those that don't know, in preparation for the Super RIZIN card, Rena has been almost training exclusively in Thailand.
Yeah, true.
And she's been bringing girls over from AACC to train with her in Thailand.
Right.
Miki Matono and Ayaka Watanabe have been training with her in Thailand like this entire time. And this fight is interesting to me, not because of who her opponent is, but because she's fighting at strawweight. Now, Ayaka Watanabe is very close with Miki Matono. They're very good friends. They actually have like social media accounts together where they make shared content.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
With Miki Matono in the road to the UFC and wanting to go to the UFC, I can't help but think that Ayaka Watanabe also now has a similar goal. And that's why her next fight is at strawweight.
Sure, makes sense. But Ayaka, you said that she had a couple of the bad injuries too, right, in the past, no?
Correct. She suffered a very bad concussion,
Oh, okay.
and I believe she had to take, because if you look, before she trained at AACC, she actually trained at a different gym.
Uh-huh.
I forget which gym, there's too many in my head, but she trained somewhere else. And I believe she had to take an extended leave of absence while her concussion healed. And it was during that time period that Saudi Oshima actually reached out to her and invited her to come train at AACC.
Okay.
So I think she was bad. Oh, wait. I can pull up her record real quick. That might help me refresh.
Yeah, her record is not so impressive, but
I forget, maybe it was in training that she got knocked out or something. But
okay.
I think her record is deceptive
Uh-huh.
because the Emi Fujino fight was a last minute, I think it was like a 1 week replacement where she stepped in.
Okay.
And she actually moved up a weight division to fight that. And Fujino's a very physically powerful fighter, so that's going to be kind of tough on such short notice. And the Machi fight was very close. Now, what's interesting about Ayaka is she has a judo background, but she's one of the few fighters at AACC that has turned herself into a striker. And she has knockout power. She knocked out Satomi Takano when she won the Shuto title. So it's kind of an interesting contrast with your kind of, when you think of a stereotypical Japanese female fighter, you think of like a Megumi Fuji, Seika Izawa, or like a Ayaka Hamasaki. She's very much more of like a Chuck Liddell. She uses her judo to stop you from taking her down and tries to knock you out on the feet. So it's an interesting fight. It has good implications. And yeah, she's kind of she's a prospect in Japan. It's worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah. So this is going to be an interesting one. And they're flying in the Korean fighter is in too, And yes, let's talk about this deep too, because I gotta mention that all these small shows are now can for some reason afford to start bringing in fighters from overseas.
Yeah. So, well, I was actually reading an article today. I think MMA Planet, they're like my favorite news source now.
Okay.
For Japanese, if you read Japanese and you want to like read good interviews, go to MMA Planet. It's not like the stereotypical like what's your favorite color. They actually like ask decent questions. But,
right.
Sayaki actually said, I think this last deep card sold out, only standing room, tickets at the door. And the event before that was also sold out before one of the fighters got injured. Then they had to refund some of the tickets, but it was essentially a sold out show. And when asked why he thinks that is, I mean, he credited essentially RIZIN.
Yeah,
like the relationship with RIZIN. And he mentioned that they've been doing these kind of rising fighters versus deep fighters, and it's been doing very well for them.
Right, like Ken Kitagizawa versus Koro kind of matchup, right?
Exactly. If a fighter's fought in rising and they haven't fought in deep, also what he said was more fighters want to fight for deep now because they know that deep has this relationship with RIZIN, and that if you want to go to the UFC or you want to go to one championship, deep will let you go.
Right. So it's free. So it's the best route because if you win in deep or became a champion in deep, it's almost guaranteed to get into rising, right? Almost.
Exactly. So fighters now understand that. So now better fighters also want to fight for deep. So it's kind of working very well for them.
Right. And there's a youngster named Ren Ozaki who fought in Road to UFC first round, lost, but he was also a deep fighter, my client. And, he had an extra choice to either go to another promotion or UFC. And he chose Road to UFC, and it was no problem talking to Psyche about it. So, yeah, it's not like other promotion who try to block you from fighting for UFC. And I'm not going to mention names now anymore. But, yeah, so it's not like that. And I think time has changed, I think Pancrase and Deep understands that,
Yeah. I love your choice of words on things. Yes. Yes, I believe that they understand that.
Right. Anyway, so I got to get going today. So we talked about 55 minutes. So, yeah. So anything more you want to mention about this Deep show?
I will say in closing, Machi being back, they're clearly making her into a star. mean, they're trying to develop her into a star, so they're kind of giving her a rebound fight at this event.
Yeah,
I will say.
yeah, exactly. So when you lose in RIZIN, the Deep could be a stage for you to make a comeback.
Yeah.
Or if the new star beats this fighter, and that fighter could go to the RIZIN. So I think from Deep's point of view, it's just totally a win-win situation.
Oh, yeah. So I think the big news from this Deep Jewels announcement, though, is that Sarah, from the infamous Sarah versus Sarah fight, is finally making her pro debut.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we're all excited because I don't know if you remember when that happened. We were all laughing because it was just Sarah versus Sarah.
Right.
Nobody knew what was going on.
Oh, also, I think we should mention the fact that not only the rising fighters, the Saikis are pretty good at picking up some of the fighters from breaking down too. I think
that's been huge for him.
Huge, right?
Because I believe Saki is also fighting on this card against Hime, and Saki, I believe, is from Breaking Down, and she has crazy knockout power. She is a very exciting fighter. I mean, her grappling, say what you will, but for a girl at that weight to be knocking people out, it's very exciting.
Yeah, exactly. So
they're way more opportunistic. Like Saki, I mean, it doesn't always work out. They got that one girl, the name escapes me, who was like an Olympic hopeful who fought once and never came back. But they're good at getting these people. They're good at finding these athletes that can potentially be good.
Let me ask you this. As a MMA fans, let's say if you can buy like a $10 ticket per month to watch all these Deep and Pancrase, all these shows on Abema Live, will you do it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we need something more, right? So yeah, I mean, it's so hard for American audience to access these shows because I wish there's more easy access.
I think Deep is more accessible now with their YouTube membership program.
Yeah, exactly right. So they have that. Yeah.
But Pancrase, I believe, is still difficult because I think they're still working out some copyright issue or something. Not quite exactly familiar with what's going on.
Yeah, actually, it is actually difficult because in America, there's a 50 states. So you really have to cooperate with all 50 different laws, even to just put up app, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I could see that. So, well, anyway, so I guess we talked enough today.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Good. So I guess let's try to do this in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be trying to, approach you more often, to get this done. Good. So yeah.
Will you be? I have a quick question. Will you be at Super RIZIN show?
No, not this time.
Okay.
I'll probably have to go to Combate. We have
that's exciting.
To Japan, and we got a couple of things we need to do there. So
perfect.
All right, so
I'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, let's do this again in a few weeks.
All right.
And thank you for listening to everyone. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.